Hello and welcome back to the channel. Happy Valentine's Day. We are not your typical couple who celebrate Valentine's Day with shiny objects and fancy meals out because frankly...
That's half right.
I mean, not now.
Food.
There will be no fancy meal out this year. And there hasn't been for a while just because...
Reasons.
Toddler. And so, but there is one thing that we do. There was one thing that is... But there is one thing that we do for friends and family and people that we love.
Obviously, we make them tasty food.
Mm-hmm. Because our love language is carbs. We tell you we love you by feeding you.
Yeah.
And
it's the Jewish grandmother thing.
Yeah, if we don't feed you, that means that we don't like you.
Then go ahead and starve!
So, what we are going to be doing today is a little bit different. There is no sewing content that's happening here, but we are still making. We are going to be sharing with you two of our most frequently requested recipes among our group of friends. And one of them is very easy, and one of them is a little bit more complicated and takes a little bit more time.
Yeah. Most of that is waiting, because bread.
So do you want to talk about the bread recipe?
Sure. I found this because some of our friends got us hooked on Great British Baking, and so there is on Netflix the masterclass where you have Paul Hollywood and Mary Berry baking and cooking, and just...
They're precious.
It's great. But one of the recipes is Paul Hollywood's chocolate cherry bread. And so...
Of course we had to try it. And that's what we gave Zach's grandmother for Christmas.
She freezes it and carves off tiny little slices throughout the year. And like, I will bake your new bread, please. That's 2 months old at this point. Stop.
So we're going to make that, and we are going to make another recipe that is frequently requested, which is the chocolate cherry cupcakes. And I learned this recipe from Zach's mom, and it could not possibly be simpler.
It is. No, the ganache is slightly tricky, but the cupcake itself is dead simple.
It's a dump cake, but we'll get there. We're going to start with the chocolate cherry bread, and then we'll make the chocolate cherry cupcakes. And we thought chocolate and cherry would be good for Valentine's Day because they're just very on theme for Valentine's Day. It's the chocolate and the red cherries, and so it just seemed really appropriate. And so we are going to share how we do this with all of you.
For the bread, using a bread scale, measure out 500 grams or 1 pound 2 ounce of bread flour. Then you'll be adding 10 grams or 2 teaspoons of salt. I'm using kosher salt here and preferring to go by weight because if you're using different salts, they can have finer grains and volume and weight don't always match up. Next, add in 30 milliliters or 2 fluid ounces of olive oil. It's approximately 30 grams. You'll also see me tearing out the scale in between, just so I get a nice even measure on each ingredient. A little more. There you go. Next, add 10 grams of yeast. Mine has been blooming with a few teaspoons of warm water and some sugar to help wake it up and develop. And load it into your stand mixer. And on medium speed, mix and slowly stream in 320 milliliters of room temperature water. This part does take a while. Because after you get all your water added, it's going to mix for a good 5 to 7 minutes while the gluten develops to become a nice, pliable dough. Takes a while. As it works, it's going to start pulling away from the sides like you see here. Once it starts pulling away and getting nice and clean, you're about where you want to be. Not quite there yet. You're going to start hearing a slapping sound from your mixer, and it's going to look about like this. This is where you want it to be. Next, we add in our can of cherries that we have drained because we don't want to add too much moisture back into the dough. You want to have some extra flour on hand to help tighten this back up. Turn the mixer back on, a little lower so it can help try to incorporate. And again, add flour as needed so it doesn't look so sloppy. Then we're going to add 100 grams each of white chocolate and dark chocolate. The original recipe calls for plain chocolate, but we think dark gives you a nice contrast. By the way, we use Ghirardelli. It's the good stuff. Once everything's mixed, take a large enough bowl for all of your dough. Make sure it's well oiled. And we're going to turn out the dough onto a flour to work surface. So just get a good dusting. You don't want your dough to be sticking here. I like using a bench scraper because it's really a large flat spatula to scrape everything clear. Turn out your dough onto the floured surface, making sure you're getting everything out of there. You don't want to waste any of that good cherries and chocolate. And adding some flour as you need. Work your dough a little more and trying to get into a nice smooth ball. Here you see me squeezing under as I'm rotating it so I can get a little tension in the top skin. Then put the dough into your oiled bowl, cover with a towel, and leave somewhere nice and warm to prove for an hour and a half until it's doubled in size. Once it's doubled, turn it back out onto a floured work surface. You want to make sure you flour it before you turn it out. I'll catch on in a second. Right about now, yep. And then get your dough nice and tidy again and divide it in half. Dough knives are very good for this. And you're going to punch down each half, roll it up so it can expand outwards in the long direction instead of in like a giant tube, and roll it into a nice long sausage. Working from the middle and going out. I'm going to link Hollywood's video on how to do this because it's the area I always have issues with, is the braiding. Make sure both of your dough logs are about the same size, well, the same size, and then place them into an X pattern. One over the top. And taking your bottom one first, you're going to go 1 down, 2 up. 1 down, 2 up. Follow Paul's video. I muck it up pretty badly here and have to redo it, and it's still not great. Put it onto a baking tray lined with parchment paper. Get a little frustrated at your braiding.
It's not quite supposed to look like that.
Then either cover with a towel or put in a proving bag for 1 more hour to prove. And this time, preheat your oven to 425 as you see. Place the bread into your oven. A baking stone is helpful for whenever baking, and cook for 20 minutes. At the end of those 20 minutes, you're going to drop the temperature down to 400 degrees and go for another 25. At the end of all this, don't grab a sheet tray with your bare hand. Take your bread out, tap it to hear a thunk like you know what you're doing, and leave on a wire rack to cool. And we're done.
Now for the cupcakes. You will need 1 box of Devil's Food Cake Mix. The brand here is irrelevant. Buy whatever's on sale or whatever's your favorite. 1 can of cherry pie filling. 2 eggs. 1 cup of semi-sweet chocolate chips. We exclusively use Ghirardelli in this house, and you want to buy high quality chocolate chips because the fat content is really going to help out here when we're making the ganache. And the secret to the cupcakes, to amplify the cherry flavor, is 1 teaspoon of almond extract. Today, we're baking for our friends who don't eat eggs, so instead of 2 eggs, we're using some egg replacer. Generally, it works just fine for recipes like this. This is what I meant when I said this recipe was easy. Dump the cake mix in a bowl. I'm using the stand mixer because it was set up already, but you definitely could do this by hand and just use a wooden spoon. Dump in the cherry pie filling. Make sure you scrape the sides of the can with the spatula to get out all that gooey goodness. Add the eggs, or in this case, egg substitute, chocolate chips, and almond extract. Mix until combined. And they're ready to go.
Looks unpleasant, smells fantastic.
Scoop the batter into a prepared cupcake tray and fill them about 2/3 full. You could also make this as a larger cake if you wanted to do it that way. Bake the cupcakes at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 17 to 20 minutes, depending on your oven, rotating once to ensure even baking. Our new oven is notoriously cold, so this took a bit longer.
Cupcakes.
They're a little gooey. Our old oven could regularly bake these in 17 minutes. When doing the toothpick test to check for doneness, remember there are molten chocolate chips in your cupcake. Do not overbake them because you hit a chocolate chip. Remove the cupcakes to a cooling rack and let them cool completely before topping with ganache, which is up next. You could eat them uniced like a very decadent muffin. Emma did. But trust us, you want it on the ganache. To a small saucepan, add 1 cup of sugar, 5 tablespoons of unsalted butter, and half a cup of half and half. Do not try to substitute milk for this. Ask us how we know. Bring to a boil over medium-high heat. Once a boil is achieved, whisk constantly for 3 minutes. Set a timer here. 3 minutes is longer than you think. After the 3 minutes is up, remove from the heat and whisk in the chocolate chips until the mixture is glossy and smooth. I suggest adding them a bit at a time rather than all at once like we did here to avoid the gloopage that you see. This next bit is optional, but we like to add a bit of espresso powder to the ganache to enhance the chocolate flavor. To top the cupcakes, you can do 2 things. If your cupcakes have gotten a good domed rise on them, you can dunk them in the ganache to give them a nice all-over coating. However, if they sank a little, or if they were a bit underfilled and aren't quite getting the coverage you want, then you can also spoon the ganache over the top of them and spread out an even coating. Either way, you're going to want to keep the ganache hot and give it a good whisk every now and then to keep the sugar from crystallizing. There will be lots of ganache left over, but this is great for dipping fruit, pouring over ice cream, or just eating with a spoon. For that final finishing touch, top each cupcake with a whole maraschino cherry.
Once everything's completed, of course, you have to make it all nice and pretty and take a lovely thumbnail so people will watch how you made it.
Here, I'll hold the cupcakes.
Enjoy.
Okay, so we are in progress. We are en route to drop off the cupcakes and the bread because we are not in the habit of eating an entire loaf of bread and 2 dozen cupcakes by ourselves. This is how we show people we love them, is we feed them. Isn't that right, Little Bean? We feed people we like, right? Yeah. Are you excited? Yeah. So we are doing the homemade version of DoorDash. I'm coming.
Drop off number 2 complete.
Yep. And was it fun to see our friends and to give them yummy food? Yeah. Yeah. And did you get to play with your friend?
From 20
From
feet.
the porch.
From 20
Yeah.
feet, you know.
All right. And so this is the conclusion of our Valentine's Day baking adventure from the alternate universe in which we were Rainy Day Bakery instead of Fire and Ice Designs. But now it's time to go home and make dinner. Have a great Valentine's Day, and we will see you next week with normal sewing content. Bye! Say bye-bye, Emma.